Welcome to the Clear Admit MBA Admissions Podcast. I'm Graham Richmond, and this is your wiretaps for Monday, October 13th, 2025. Emory University's full-time MBA powers growth in your career, your leadership, and your future. Built on a foundation of cross-functional problem-solving, leadership development, and career readiness, this top 20 MBA program delivers a high return on investment with top 5 career outcomes. Step into a global network that's connected by design and supportive by nature. Explore the Emory MBA at emory.biz/clearadmit. That's emory.biz/clearadmit. I'm joined by Alex Brown from Cornwall, England. Alex, how are things going this week?
Very good, thank you, Graham.
So give me the latest. What are people talking about on Livewire? What deadlines are upcoming, and any news and notes you want to share?
Yeah, I mean, we're seeing a lot more interview invites coming out for schools that tend to sort of trickle them out over a good period of time. So a lot of that activity is ongoing. Stanford is an example of that, but several other schools are also rolling out some of these interview invites. So lots of good activity there upcoming this week. Fisher, Mendoza, Carroll, McCombs, Marshall, Kelley, Arizona, Carey, Merage, Warrington, all have round one deadlines. The Consortium actually has its first round deadline. And Jones, they also have a deadline. Stern has a round 2 deadline. And Fuqua, Saïd, and Mendoza are releasing early action decisions.
Oh, wow.
And interview invites are scheduled to come out for Imperial and INSEAD this upcoming week.
Wow, never a dull moment.
No.
Also, I know some people are looking ahead on the horizon. I believe that the Wharton interview invitations for round 1 are kind of coming, what is that, October 22nd or something? I can't remember the exact date.
Yeah, not next week though, Graham.
No, I know, but it's coming. Yeah. So, other stuff going on. We have,
So likely, I mean, just to interrupt, likely next week we'll probably see Booth rolling out interview invites. And or Ross.
Yes. Yeah.
Would be my speculation.
Yeah, good point. Yeah, those are coming.
Yeah.
Other news, we continue to have this great schedule of events that are all kind of getting closer and closer. So we're going to connect with, in our Real Human series, we're going to connect with current students and alums from Stanford, Duke, Vanderbilt, UT Austin, INSEAD, and University of Washington Foster. That's on October 21st at 8 p.m. Eastern. And then the next day, on the 22nd, also at 8 p.m., we're going to connect with students from Wharton, Berkeley, Georgia Tech, and UNC Kenan-Flagler. So yeah, you can sign up for those. All of our events now are just at clearadmit.com/events. So you can go and sign up. We have more things coming up later in the month, these regional webinars where I think we have basically every top school on the, in the US taking part in these, but we have those different regions, the West Coast, the Great Lakes, Southeast, Mid-Atlantic, New England, and then a Texas region. And for each of those, we have, I think, anywhere from 3 to 5 or even 6 schools taking part to just talk about their, kind of regional advantages and that sort of thing. So it should be fun. Those are all coming up. And again, you can get to all of this stuff at just clearadmit.com/events. So please sign up because you have to.
So am I correct in understanding that no New York schools are represented in the regional events?
Oh, good question.
It seems like you've gone New England to Mid-Atlantic instead of calling it Northeast.
I think that the New England one may not be called. I'm just calling it New England. It might just be Northeast. But as of now, I don't believe that. I think Columbia had a conflict, and I'm not sure about Stern.
Okay.
I think those are the only 2 schools. It's really strange because we've got so many top schools taking part, but for some reason So it's not it's nothing personal about New York. No, we just they're not in that group yet. I don't know. We'll see what Mike on our team can work up. We also do have in November and into December, we are going to have deferred enrollment events as well as Masters in Management events. So stay tuned for those. And then Alex, as we've been talking about, we're going to convene on the 28th of October for our YouTube live stream. You can ask us anything you want. You just have to go to bit.ly/CA YouTube live to subscribe. So lots of event stuff and it should be fun. Alex, we did an admissions tip that I love and that I just personally remember being terrified of. And this is an admissions tip about interviewing the interviewer, right? So everyone knows that when you have one of these MBA admissions interviews, at the end, you're often asked the question, do you have any questions for me? And so we have this great tip that we put up on the website. It's accompanied by a video that you and I recorded where we touch on some of the same things. And I just love the way that we organize this, right? So I'm just going to give you just a few little tips. One is focus on the positive with your MBA interview questions, right? So this isn't the, why should I come here? Or what do you think about the fact that you placed fewer people at McKinsey this year than last year? Or something, something like that. Like focus on the positive. You can kick the tires after you've been admitted, right? Then the next point is avoid the obvious and the obscure, right? So if you're asking questions that are just super obvious right on the website, that makes you look potentially like you didn't do your homework. But also you don't want to go so far into the weeds that there's no way your interviewer is going to be able to answer the question. And that leads to the third point, which is mind your audience. So obviously, if you're interviewing with a current student, then maybe you can go further into the weeds than if you're interviewing with an admissions officer or an alum who graduated, 10 or 15 years ago, right? So it depends. Know your audience. And the last one is don't overdo it with your questions. So when they ask you to have any questions for me, the idea is not to then stay there for 30 minutes asking them, as many questions as they just asked you. This is like a couple of questions, right? But Alex, I love that because I remember being terrified of this part of the process.
Yeah, and that last point just gets to self-awareness. You should know how close you are to the end of the interview, how long the interview's been, etc. So yeah, have 1, 2, or 3 questions prepared. But if you know you're close to the end of the interview, you're probably only going to get the opportunity to ask one of those 3 questions.
Yeah, no, you're right. Yeah. So in any event, so that's over on the website. And then the other thing we did is we did a profile as part of our Real Human series of current students in the ESADE MBA class of 2027. ESADE is in Barcelona, one of the better programs in Europe, along with, ESADE and INSEAD, LBS, et cetera, right? So we did a profile, and I just wanted to read a couple of little quotes. We connected with Alex, who's from Barcelona, so he's going to school in his hometown, and he we just asked, why did you choose ESADE? What were the factors that led to this decision? And he said, for me, ESADE was an easy choice. Having one of the world's leading business schools in my own city was a unique opportunity. But what truly convinced me was how strongly I identify with its values: diversity, innovation, collaboration, social responsibility, among others. In addition, ESADE's strong connections to the healthcare sector make it an ideal platform for someone like me who's seeking to transition into this industry. So I thought that was interesting because I'm going to admit, I was not as aware of these connections that they have to healthcare. It makes sense. And obviously if he lives in Barcelona, it's a great school to attend, right?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And even if you don't live in Barcelona, Barcelona's a great place to attend a business school.
Oh, absolutely. Yes. And that, so speaking of not living in Barcelona, we also connected with Armin, and she is originally from Armenia. She's 28, studied economics in Armenia. And she had some good advice for people applying because she's the current student at ESADE as well. And we asked her, what's one thing you would change or do differently about your application process? And she said, I would allow myself more time to prepare, not only for the test, but for the reflection that it takes to present yourself authentically. For someone like me, balancing demanding consulting roles with the application process meant working under constant pressure. If I could go back, I would create more space to enjoy the process instead of treating it like another deadline. So I think she makes a really good point too.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that the application process is just such a good time for self-reflection and for planning ahead, regardless of whether you successfully matriculate in an MBA program or just planning ahead for your life goals.
Yeah,
essentially.
Yeah, totally. And then the last one I'll just mention is we connected with Laura, who's a classmate of our Mean and Alex's at ESADE, and we again asked her what's one thing you would change or do differently, and she said, if I were to do something differently, I would start my essays much earlier. Reflection takes time, and it's difficult to capture your true story when you're rushing. Giving yourself more time allows you to refine your ideas and be more authentic in how you present your journey. I thought that was really fascinating because they don't see each other's responses when we do these, right? So she and Armin have very similar thoughts on this need to reflect and how doing so really produces a better application. So I thought that was great.
And it's superb advice.
Yeah.
Yes.
Now, Alex, I don't know if you saw this, but I got into a little bit of a dust up on LinkedIn about this very Real Humans piece. And I just want to get your take on this because it's been really bothering me. So Queer Admit shared this Real Humans piece on LinkedIn, as we often do. And somebody leaves a comment. I'm not going to name this person. I don't know them, but this person leaves a comment. Oh, there are 30 out of 180 students at ESADE who are from India, and none of them have been profiled in your Real Humans piece. And so, basically accusing us of I guess sort of racism or something like that. We didn't cover any Indians in this piece. And I thought it was interesting just because I don't think this person understands how these pieces come together, but essentially we reach out to the school, right? And we say, hey, it's Real Humans time. We need 5 or 6 candidates who are current students who you think would be, interesting. They usually either send our questionnaire to the students themselves, or they put us directly in touch with the students. But we don't really handpick them. It's really the school that does. And I just thought it was an interesting accusation because when I looked at it, at the group that we did profile, we had 3 women and 3 men. We had citizens of Spain, Armenia, Indonesia, a guy from the Netherlands, but who's originally from Turkey. And we had a citizen from your homeland, the UK. Did I say that? So anyway, and all kinds of lived experiences amongst the 6 students and, industry backgrounds. And so I was like, wow, what am I missing here? Why is someone so offended that, with this? It seems like a pretty good group to me, but I don't know. What's your take on this?
Yeah, it's difficult, isn't it? Because obviously when someone's looking at the Real Humans, they're probably trying to identify folks from these pieces that are similar to themselves.
Yes, fair.
And if they're seeing that a decent representation at the school is from their home country, yet none of them are getting profiled, that's a little bit frustrating for them. But our process, I think, is very well. It's not clear to those reading, but we work directly with the admissions office, and ultimately they dictate to us who gets profiled.
Yeah,
and I think sometimes from the admissions office's standpoint, they're seeking to profile perhaps candidates that aren't potentially overrepresented in their communities because they recognize those candidates can see their fit there, and they want to see different candidates to show that there is quite a broad sort of diversity in the class bodies. So there might be a little bit of that going on.
Yeah.
But I get that point. I don't think we need to be attacked over it, but I do get that point.
No, and the other thing I thought was interesting was just that we don't, I wouldn't even argue that the schools necessarily over curate this either, because I think what happens is they probably go out to a list of people on campus and say, hey, are you willing to do this? And then some of them are just going to say, no, I'm busy with classes. I don't have time to do this. Right. Yeah. So some of it's a little luck of the draw. Right. But in any event, I just wanted to mention that. It was kind of bothering me over the weekend because I feel like we try to do a good job, and, just the internet is a dangerous
place. Go for a run, Graham. Go for a run.
That's what I was just doing before we got on air. So, all right. So anything else that you want to talk about before we get into this week's candidates?
Let's kick on.
All right. So this is Wiretap's candidate number 1. Our first candidate this week is applying to just 2 schools for now, and those schools are UNC Kenan-Flagler and UT Austin McCombs. I believe they've submitted both of these applications in the first round. Prior to business school, they've been working in the kind of legal administration and operations domain. So they're kind of helping the business side of a law firm, the kind of operations and stuff. They are looking to do something else after business school. I mean, they want to sort of advance within law firm administration, with the ultimate goal of being a COO of a large-sized firm. And when I say something else, I meant something like non-traditional that you don't necessarily see every MBA grad doing. They've taken the GRE, and they have a 315 on that test. They are retaking the test. Even though they've already applied, they're going to retake and submit a new score kind of, in process. And I believe they're taking the test in a couple of weeks. They had a 3.46 undergraduate GPA, 7 years of work experience. And I know you kind of traded some messages with them, and they ended up sharing the fact that, they are going to retake the test, that their top choice, which is UT Austin, because they want to work in Austin after business school, has, apparently will accept a late score, kind of an updated score after the deadline. And they also say that they're going to take some math courses starting in January to get their quant skills up to par. And they think they'll have great recommendations. They also are very involved in their local community. They actually say very involved in the local Jewish community and my synagogue, including founding a women's circle for Jewish young professionals. They're on the board of directors for the synagogue and also chair a committee at the congregation. And they're mentioning that they're including that stuff in their essays so that they are, come across as well-rounded, et cetera. So what do you make of this candidacy?
Yeah, I mean, I think overall, this is actually a really interesting candidate. Like you say, their work is a little less traditional, working, for a law firm, and with the idea in the long run to sort of manage and run a law firm's offices rather than doing the legal work, I suppose. But also outside of work, I mean, obviously they're very involved engaged in their community. And I do think that does show sort of, another interesting perspective for them. Obviously, the candidate has a real interest in being in Austin, Texas, post MBA. Mm-hmm. And we'll see some candidates like this, right? They know exactly where they want to be post MBA. So location is super important in this regard. They will really benefit from doing their MBA likely in Austin, Texas, or in close proximity, and so forth. So that helps, I think, for them in terms of target school selection. Obviously, UT McCombs is one of their, is probably their principal target because of those reasons. Yeah, I don't think they needed to have applied in round one to optimize, and they have this issue of they're going to retake the GRE
right,
to try to get that more up to par. So would it have been better for them to have applied in round two with that new GRE score, or taking the approach they're taking? Maybe there isn't that much difference, but they need to make sure when they retake the test, they get that, a better score, I think, just to be more competitive. Can they get in with a 315? Yes, it's probably at the lower range for programs like McCombs. But I think I would feel more comfortable if they were in the 320s for sure.
Yeah.
So, taking additional math coursework, again, that's not until January. So to me, Graham, this sort of does smack of someone that perhaps should have just applied in round two and got more of their ducks in a row. Nevertheless, many schools will take additional materials after the deadline, and one example of that is an additional higher or a new test score.
Yeah.
So yeah, I hope they do well in the retake of the GRE, and hopefully they along the way they get an interview invite and can sort of really present themselves.
Yeah, I'm kind of two minds here. So on the one hand, I'm like, wow, 3.46, decent GPA. This person's super active in her community, is also, working in the legal profession, not as a lawyer, but on the kind of operations and management side, but, kind of interesting and has goals in that domain that are very concrete and, to me, attainable. On the other side, we have this low GRE, and I worry that given her work experience, that there could be this issue around quantitative ability, right? So people will look and say, oh, well, if you're just doing sort of management work, back office, et cetera, at a law firm, you're not, hanging around a lot of numbers potentially. So right. I'm nervous about that, and it's it's the combo of a lower GRE with maybe this sort of quant liability. And so I agree, probably should have just applied in round two and done MBA math or business fundamentals from GMAC or something in the fall to sort of really demonstrate the readiness. What I would say to this person is, if it doesn't work out with UT Austin, and I hope it does, I hope that they, or with Keen Flagler, I hope that they get that new test score, get it in, and that it helps them. But if it doesn't, and they really want to be in Texas, I would strongly consider looking at, SMU Cox or Rice Jones. Those are two very good MBA programs in the same state that could get them to the position that they may want. They could also look at places like Vanderbilt or Emory. There are lots of really good schools out there. But we'll see. We'll have to see where the chips fall on this GRE retake, I think, as a first step.
Yeah, and they'll have, because they've applied to a couple of schools in round one, they'll have the luxury of sort of getting feedback in terms of decisions for round one. So, and they'll have plenty of time to target some of these other programs in round two if they need to. And if they do get into McCombs, like say, that would be ideal, but maybe even then they might want to take a punt on Fuqua or something like that. Just to get an out-of-state experience to bring them back to Austin, Texas. So yeah, I mean, there are advantages and disadvantages of their strategy to go into round one for sure. But let's hope their approach pays off.
Yeah, agreed. I want to thank her for sharing her profile. Best of luck on the test when it comes up. And let's move on, though, and talk about Wiretap's candidate number 2. So our second candidate this week is applying to Carnegie Mellon Tepper, Cornell Johnson, and UCLA Anderson. So just 3 schools looking to start next fall. They've been working in investment banking and then more recently in a family business, although the family business is kind of a investment type experience, according to them. They're interested in maybe either returning to the family business to help expand it, or potentially getting into investment banking in the short term, like right away after business school before returning to the family business. They have a GRE score of 317 and an undergraduate GPA of 2.9. They have 4 years of experience, located in Canada, would love to land in New York City after business school. And they do mention that they had a tough time in undergrad, hence the 2.9. But that they basically took a leave of absence. They had 2 terrible years, took a leave of absence, and came back and had a 3.75 GPA in their last 2 years. And they're sort of on the fence about whether they should be retaking that GRE score, which I said was a 317. They have, however, worked to build an alternative transcript. That's what we call it when you're trying to bolster your GPA or need to address a kind of weak GPA. So they took Math for Management at UC Berkeley online, I'm guessing, and they also did MBA Math, which I mentioned earlier, and they've taken 2 accounting classes, and all these classes they've done, they've had A grades. So they've built that alternative transcript. But Alex, what do you make of this candidacy?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a shame because obviously something happened in those first 2 years at undergrad to really pull their GPA down, because if they had a 375 in their last 2 years and their overall GPA is 2.9, those first 2 years must have been fairly horrific. And they attribute it to health issues and so forth. So I would certainly address this in the optional essay. And as you say, they built out an alternative transcript, so that's very good. But again, the 317 GRE, even though it's quite good on the math side, I believe, that's what they said, they really need to try to get that GRE above the median for the schools they're targeting to help compensate for the much lower GPA. So I would absolutely push them to go all in, prep, and try to improve that GRE score, because that would then further their case that these first 2 years at undergrad were a complete anomaly, and the reasons for it were, and they can make that case. Mm-hmm. It surprises me that someone can graduate with a 2.9 GPA and have the sort of career that they've had, actually, investment banking and, other related stuff. And I assume they've done very well. And obviously they've got the family business that they work for and so on and so forth. So I'm guessing that their career focus to date and so forth has actually been very good. So hopefully they can get some strong recommendations, although with the family business that might be a bit more challenging, who's their recommender and so on and so forth. So I'm in just a little bit of a quandary with this overall candidacy, Graham, because part of me thinks that there's actually good evidence that they are very smart, but there's other sort of elements of their metrics, like the 2.9 GPA and the 317 GRE, that tell a different story.
Yeah, I'm concerned. I mean, I think when you look at the schools that they're targeting, These are all arguably top 16, schools with, or maybe top 20 if you're, want to be generous here. And I worry that a 2.9, 3.17 is not going to cut it. And I know they've done a lot of what you're supposed to do, right? They built this great alternative transcript that will help. But if you need a home run on the test when the GPA is really low. And that's, I think, what it comes down to. The other thing I'm a little concerned about, as you point out, is, where are the recs coming from if you're in a family business? I mean, usually you go to an advisor like or a customer or someone else who's not a family member to write. But also, I don't see any extracurriculars. And I believe you asked them about extracurriculars and they didn't respond to that. So I'm nervous because it'd be one thing if everything else was great, amazing extracurriculars, it would help to maybe bolster these sort of weaknesses in the academic side. But I'm a little concerned. And so I would actually encourage this person to retake the test, apply in round 2, and ideally probably expand the scope beyond the 3 schools that they've mentioned here.
Yeah, no, I think that's very fair.
All right. So I want to thank them for sharing, and hopefully I know it's not fun advice to hear, but hopefully it's really helpful as they move on. But let's talk about Wiretap's candidate number 3. So our third candidate this week is applying to IE Business School in Madrid, ESADE in Barcelona, INSEAD and Oxford. They want to start, they say, in 27, so they have a little bit of time, it sounds like. They've been working as a strategic intelligence manager, and they're doing that actually in the banking sector. So they basically work in kind of competitive intelligence in banking. They've progressed from analyst to senior analyst to manager. This candidate is bilingual, French and English. They not only did an undergrad where they had a 3.1, but they also have a master's degree in marketing where they have a 3.5. No test score yet, and they have 9 years of work experience. This candidate's located in North Africa, wants to return to Africa after business school. And they mention, that they are wondering about this sort of 3.1 undergrad versus 3.5 masters that they have. And so they're wondering if they should emphasize their master's GPA to strengthen the academic side of the profile. And they're also just wondering, what are their odds of admissions at some of these schools? They, are kind of just wondering what they need to highlight to be successful in the application process. And the last thing I'll mention is they did elaborate on their career goals. They said, looking to pivot or advance my career through an MBA, which I know you and I talked about, Alex, before we came on air. So I'll let you have at it. What do you make of this candidacy?
Yeah, I think that career goal needs to be much better developed because, basically, they looking to pivot means doing something different, or advancing my career through an MBA means doing much of the same of what they're doing. So they've covered the entire spectrum in a short phrase, and so forth. So they really want to think long and hard about this. So obviously, it's a huge investment in their career. It's probably the biggest investment that they'll make for the rest of their career. So they really want to know what the outcomes are going to look like, and so forth. So it's not only valuable in terms of making themselves a stronger candidate for admissions, but it's very valuable just from a personal perspective, and so forth, that we talked about a little bit earlier. So I would really do a deep dive to figure out the goals. They've already got 9 years of experience, so I'm not sure why they're waiting an additional year, unless they've only just had the sort of thought that they're starting to look at an MBA. But certainly if they could get their ducks in a row applying round 2, the January rounds this season, that might be a better approach. But to get their ducks in a row, they've got to sort out these goals. And I would suggest that they need to take a standardized test.
Oh, yeah.
Or at least I don't see any evidence that they've done that yet. So they've got the masters, so a 3.5. They talk about, should I emphasize that? I mean, you absolutely need to talk about that.
Yeah.
But where the emphasis is going to be on the undergraduate degree. But you can complement it with the additional masters. But then they've got to distinguish and differentiate why they need an MBA based off the fact they already have a master's in marketing. So there's a potential roadblock there that they need to overcome too. And obviously you can make the case because perhaps it's from the international perspective. They're further along in their career. They recognize the value and so on and so forth. So there are good reasons why you might want to do a full-time MBA at this stage. But they do need to overcome that. So I would say they've got to take the standardized test. They've got to do really well in it. And they've got to get much more clarity on these on these goals, Graham.
Yeah, I agree. I think there's some serious strikes against this candidate when you look at, 3.1 undergrad GPA, no test that we can see. And they also mentioned limited formal extracurriculars, right? So
yeah,
those are serious strikes. And it's not like the list of target schools is easy, right? They've got, arguably some of the best schools in Europe. Some might say that IE is a bit easier to get into than the likes of ESADE and Oxford or INSEAD, but none of these schools are. I mean, these are all top schools in Europe. So I'm nervous about this. Now, and as you just said, I love that they have the 3.5 GPA in their master's, but that master's also opens up a little bit of a Pandora's box around like, hey, wait, why do you need another master's in business? So they need to sort of make sure that that's clear. In an ideal world, that 3.5 from the master's would be like a degree that they completed right after undergrad and they hadn't had any work experience or, something like that. So, but I don't know. But, obviously taking the test and doing really well would probably put to rest some of these things, and I'm hopeful that maybe they do have some outside interests, if not formal activity. Maybe there are things they do with their spare time, like running or, whatever it might be, right? So I think as of now, when I look at this list, I say it's going to be tough, but we don't have a test score and that could change things. And so I would encourage them, if they are, I think in all instances, it might be smart to cast a slightly wider net and look at some additional programs. And you have some other really good programs in Europe if they're set on being in Europe. You've got Rotterdam School of Management, you've got ESMT in Berlin. So there are other schools out there that they could be looking at too. But they need to get things sort of sorted with the test, and that'll be their best kind of way to combat some of the issues.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. And just one last thing, as you said, I don't want to harp on it too much, but as you said, like they need a set of career goals. I mean, that's kind of a basic piece of this process. So they need to be able to articulate what are they doing after business school and that's a basic thing. We have a lot of good information on our website about how to articulate your goals and how to figure that out. There's even a video of you and I talking about it. So they should avail themselves of all these resources and put together a strong file that way. Anyway, I want to thank them for sharing their profile. Alex, I know you're headed off on some vacation, so thanks for doing this, a little bit earlier in the week so we could work around your vacation time and have an amazing trip, and we'll connect when you're back, I guess.
Very good. Thank you very much. Stay safe, everyone. Take care.